Hey guys, it's Miko here, and today we're going to do a quick video on how to do a post test. So if you're curious about that, we did an AMD CPU, and we're going to put that together for you and show you the process and what you need to do. My buddy at AskANerd.tv helped me out on this. We built it for my buddy Fernando. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. Alright guys, so today we're going to do a post test on a AMD machine. We're using the Ryzen 3600 and we're using the Asus Prime X570 Pro motherboard. And we got our Corsair Vengeance 32 gigs of DDR4 and with all the fancy LEDs. And we got our RS SSD. It's a NVMe. It's a pretty neat little SSD. We also got a 2060 that we're going to place in the machine. And last we have our 750 watt power supply from Corsair. And these are all the things we'll need to do the post test. So first we're going to whip out our motherboard to properly install our CPU. So now that we have our CPU out, with AMD processors they have a bunch of pins at the bottom, and on the bottom left there's a small little white arrow, and there's also a little arrow with an indentation on the socket of the motherboard to indicate which direction you should install your CPU. There will be no need to force the CPU in. It should fall right into place. And then just push the lever back down. Next, we're going to be installing our DDR4 RAM. Now there will be a notch on the bottom of our RAM sticks and also a notch within the RAM slot. Make sure these two align and then securely place the RAM stick within the RAM slot. Make sure you hear both sides click in to verify it's secured. Now on this build we do have a liquid cooler that we're going to place on the CPU, but for the post test we're just going to use the stock CPU fan that it came with. But to use this, we had to remove the stock brackets that were on the motherboard to place the CPU fan on this CPU motherboard combo. And just to mention, our CPU fan has thermal paste pre-applied, so we will not have to worry about that in this instance. Once removed, the screws from the CPU fan fit the bracket that's already pre-existing on the motherboard. So you just tighten each screw in a cross pattern until the CPU fan is secured to the motherboard. Now it is difficult to over tighten these screws because there are springs underneath, but just make sure you don't use excessive force. And now we're going to connect the CPU fan cable to the CPU fan header. Usually it's labeled clearly. If not, you can refer back to your user manual to find out its location. Next, we're going to install our GPU. It just slides right into the PCI Express slot, and make sure the clip on the end of the PCI Express slot clips to verify it's secured. And finally, we have our power supply. So we're just going to make sure that the main powers to the board and to the GPU are connected properly. We are using a modular power supply, so each one of these power cables can be individually removed. First, we're installing the PCI power cable to the GPU. It's an 8-pin cable in this instance. Next, we're going to install our 8-pin CPU power cable. Now there is an additional 4-pin port on the motherboard, but that's just for extra overclocking capabilities. And last but not least, we're going to install our 24-pin motherboard power cable. And the final piece of hardware we're going to install is the NVMe SSD. We have to remove this plate to get to the NVMe ports, or M.2 ports. Once the plate's removed, we have to install this stud that will hold the NVMe SSD up off of the motherboard. There's also a little rubber square that helps support the SSD. Once you slide your SSD into place properly, you use the little screw provided to secure it down to the stud that you placed on the motherboard earlier. Now some M.2 or NVMe SSDs will allow you to put the plate back on, but in this case there's a huge heat sink on it and you will not be able to place this cover back on. But now it's time to hook up our monitor and begin the post test. Now in most cases there is a button on modern motherboards that automatically powers the motherboard. But on older and cheaper motherboards, you may have to jump the power switch pins. Now if everything spins up and powers on and you see a display on your monitor, then everything's good to go. But in the cases that you do not see your monitor turn on or anything spin up, you may see some red lights to indicate what exactly is going on. So you would refer to your user manual in that case. Or on older motherboards, it'll let out a series of beeps to indicate what is wrong with the motherboard if you have an internal speaker installed. Now in most instances, the motherboard will go straight to the BIOS if there's no operating system installed. And the main things you want to verify is the RAM and make sure all of it is recognized, and your hard drive, make sure that it recognizes it, especially these M.2s, because it has been finicky in the past with M.2s being recognized by the motherboard, but that was on the first generations. They have gotten better since. And that's it. We just completed our post test and verified all our main components are working before we installed them in our case. So here's the final build, and I'll show you more in the next video on how we put that together. But as of now, this video is the post test for this PC build that you see here. Thanks for watching, guys. For more content like this, please like and subscribe to this video. Thank you.